y'all, welcome back to my channel. Today I have my April wrap up. We're in the month of May and I keep wanting to say May, but it's my April wrap up. A little bit of a different scene today. It's just such a pretty day outside. The sun is like so bright and shiny. I will try not to squint too much. But I thought it would be fun to come outside and film and talk about some books. I have a few stats that I'll share with y'all. I don't know if y'all are interested in that. I just kind of started doing that just for my benefit, just to see what I did for the month. So I just thought I would go ahead and mention it. So I read/listened to a total of 17 books. I listened to 14 books in the month of April, and I read 3. That's a little shameful, but the month of April was super busy for me. As if you've been following along on my channel, you know a little bit about what had went on with my job, and I had to hurry up and finish some things at a deadline before switching departments, kind of thing, and that is going well. So yeah, a lot of books got listened to last month while I was getting my work done. So I have one DNF to talk about. I have one, I guess it could be another DNF because I'm just not sure about it. I kind of want to maybe revisit it in a later time, but we'll see. I just wasn't in the mood for it. We'll talk about that. I have 1 2-star, 6 3-stars, 5 4-stars, and 4 5-stars. Let's start off with the not so great reads. The book that I might want to possibly revisit at a later time is The Running Man by Stephen King. I just wasn't in the mood for this. I mentioned this in my last reading vlog. I'd spoken to my friend Debbie, who I borrowed the book from, and she did tell me, she's like, yeah, Stephen King's writing is something that you have to kind of adjust to, kind of get used to. I just wasn't in the mood, and I don't think it was the writing as much as just the story just wasn't gripping me. But I'd like to try again at a later time. So from what I gather, this is about a young father, like in his 20s, mid-20s, something like that. It's set in the future, 2025, and I'm not sure what is going on, what kind of poverty has hit the world. It just seems like there's not a lot of work out there, so there's hardly like any income coming in. So they have these games that they can participate in to win a bunch of money. But I believe there's only going to be like one man standing in these games. So he decides to go ahead and enter because his like 18-month-old child is really, really sick, and they just can't afford for the health care that she needs. So he goes ahead and he enters himself. But you have to go through like this type of physical thing. It kind of reminded me of like a conveyor belt of like men going through these different obstacles of whether they're able to enter the games mentally and physically. So that's as far as I got, as like he was going through the process of entering the games. That's as far as I got. It does sound interesting. I am still interested in it. I just wasn't in the mood at that time. After my day of work was complete, I just wanted to get in bed and read something that was enjoyable, and this wasn't what I wanted at the time. So this could be revisited in the future. The DNF that I will not be revisiting is A Panic Room by Robert Goddard. This was just not anything for me. From the synopsis, it sounded really good. I was thinking this was going to be something about a panic room and maybe someone trapped in a panic room, but that's not what it is. That is not what it is at all. So I went ahead and I went on Goodreads and I read a spoiler review. Yeah, it's not something that I definitely would be interested in. It was being referred to as an economical thriller, but yeah, what was in the panic room and that whole outcome of the story was nothing that I was thinking. Like, nothing in that range at all. So this is going in the unhaul pile that I have in my room as soon as I can get somewhere to bring it, because I will not be revisiting that book. All right, next up, my 2-star rating, and that is All the Missing Girls by Megan Miranda. I really had high expectations for this because I've heard that this was her best work. I personally did not think so. I actually preferred one of her other books that I read this month over this one, but I get the lure of this book. It's told backwards, which maybe I'm just not smart enough to follow along with, but I kept getting confused, and I was like, what is happening? And when the end came, but it was really the beginning, I was like, well, how are we here now when the end game in the beginning has nothing to do with this? I was so confused. Anyway, I just didn't get it. I couldn't follow along well. Maybe it was because I was listening to it on audio, which I did like the narrator. I did like her voice, but I think maybe this story is just something that you don't listen to, that you need to actually read with your eyeballs. I think maybe I would have possibly got it a little better, but I did keep referring back to the book because I was just lost most of the time, and I'm like, wait, what did I miss? When did her engagement ring go missing? Where did I miss that at? And it's because we hadn't gotten to that part yet. It was just, I was all over the place with this book. It's not even memorable in my brain to tell you what it was even about. I know we follow along with Nicolette, or Nick, I think it's what they were calling her Nick. She moves away from her hometown to start a new life, and you don't really know why, but there she, you know, finds love, and she gets engaged and all that good stuff. She goes home. She goes home because of her father. Her father's was a really bad alcoholic. Her mother passed away years ago due to cancer, and her father just kind of went downhill from there, and the alcohol has caused Alzheimer's. So sometimes he remembers things, sometimes he doesn't, and I think he was getting worse, and her brother contacted her, so she went ahead and she went home to help. And this is all in the beginning, nothing spoiled. This all right in the beginning. It's kind of like the prologue of the book. Yeah, because it starts off as day 1, and then after you read that, it's day 15. The story starts going backwards from there. So yeah, that's what I really understood in the beginning. So you do learn that a good friend of hers went missing in the past, and once she gets back home, someone else goes missing, and things from the past start to come up. So everything starts revealing itself as to what happened all those years ago with the first missing girl, her friend, and what happened to her, or what went on with Nick and why she left and all that other stuff. So yeah, it does sound really good. I had really high hopes for it, and it was good in its own little way, but overall I wasn't impressed. Like I said, I just couldn't grasp the story because it was told backwards, I guess. Couldn't really figure out what was happening. I was confused the whole time. But that's just me. I've heard really good things about it. Okay, 3 stars. I got quite a few 3 stars. We'll start off with An Anonymous Girl by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. This was good. I enjoyed the story. It is very very much a psychological thriller. So we follow Jessica, and she is, I want to say, like a struggling makeup artist. And right at the beginning of the book, she's at these two college girls' home doing their makeup. She learns of this psychology study that you can get paid for. But of course it's geared towards the students because it's given by one of the professors at school. So one of the girls is talking about it, and I believe it's like $500 or something like that. So Jessica kind of sneaks her way into getting the study, and that's right in the beginning of the book. And it's even in the synopsis, so no surprise there. But from there, that's when it just kind of gets crazy, and the psychiatrist or the professor of psychology keeps asking her back to do more surveys, and then starts having her just do these random things in her normal life for studying, for this study. It is kind of messed up. It gets crazy. I don't want to say too much, or else I'll kind of give it away, but I enjoyed the story. There's no mystery. It's just a straight up psychological thriller, and it is kind of messed up. I like the story, but like I said, it just wasn't anything outstanding. I did much prefer The Wife Between Us. That was messed up. My next 3-star is The Music of What Happens, and this is by, I had to write the name down, Bill Konigsberg. I'm not sure. I know that's probably not right, and I apologize. This is a YA male-male romance. It was fun. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed listening to it. I didn't quite like, it was narrated by two men. One of the voices I really liked, the other one I did not, and I think that's kind of maybe what threw me off, but I don't think it would change my rating of this book, because it just kind of leaves you, I felt that it kind of left you hanging, and I just wasn't, I wasn't happy about how it ended. You know, I mean, it was a good story. It was fun. I enjoyed listening to it. I enjoyed getting to know these two guys and following along with how their relationship grew. So we follow along with Max and Jordan. Max is one of those guys that you probably wouldn't think would be a gay guy. He's just like a dude bro. But he's out with his friends, but he's not out in school. And then we have Jordan, who is more on the feminine side. Jordan deals with a lot of anxiety and just a lot of, I guess, just inner self-love. He's out and open at school to his friends. So Max and Jordan meet during the summer of before their senior year, I believe. And Jordan and his mom have this food truck that they're trying to start up. It was his father's, and his father passed away, and him and his mother are trying to get this food truck back and going because things are starting to get rough. They're starting to struggle with finances and things like that. His mom is a total nutcase. I kind of got just really annoyed with her and just wanted to be like, will you please be a mother? And Max is just there, and he sees the food truck, and he's kind of spots Jordan, and Jordan seems to be what might be his type. So he goes to start up a conversation with Jordan, and before he knows it, he's gonna be the one helping Jordan with the food truck. So it was really fun following along with them. Their little romance was very much slow burn. Max kind of deals with something that just previously happened. You get more of that as the story goes on, because he doesn't talk much about it, because he's not sure if it really happened or not. And then Jordan deals with his mom and having to pretty much be a parent to her because she's not being a parent to him. It was a very interesting story. It had its good moments. I just wasn't, I wanted more of their relationship between them, but they kind of held each other back, and they never really came together. It's still, in the end, I felt like it wasn't there. Like I just wanted them to be more connected. I don't know, I couldn't get a connection with them, I guess is what I'm saying. But it was fun. was a fun, lighthearted listen. I enjoyed it. Before I talk about my next 3-star, I'm gonna talk about a 4-star, because the 3-star is actually in the series and it comes after this book. So let's talk about that. And that is Lost by PC Cast and Kristen Cast. This is book 2 in the House of Night Otherworld series. I've mentioned this before on my channel. I love the House of Night series. This is like a spin-off to that series. Absolutely love the House of Night. If you're into YA, fantasy, paranormal, vampire kind of thing, check out the House of Night series. So once again, this is book 2 of the Otherworld, and this is about, it's very hard to explain this series if you haven't read the House of Night. So just briefly, the House of Night follows Zoe Redbird as she becomes a vampire. She gets marked in high school, which is usually when you get marked, because you move on to the House of Night to finish your schooling and learn not only your studies, but to learn how to be in the world as a vampire. We follow Zoe along with all her friends and how they defeat Neferet, who is the evil person in this series. How they defeat her and evil, and it's a big series, but it's a good one. You will not get bored. And then we jump into, once that series ends, the Otherworld happens, and the first book in this series is Loved, and it is Zoe's story of she is now a true adult vampire, and I can't tell you too much because that'll spoil the House of Night series. If you want to watch, or if you want to read it, want to watch it. Although I did hear it was going to be a TV series. Anyway, so we're following Zoe along with her adulthood, and in that book they get news about Neferet, and they just try to protect themselves from her, and Zoe ends up opening up this other world, and in this other world her brother Kevin is a vampire. In Zoe's world, he is not a vampire, but in this other world, he is. So this is Zoe's brother, Kevin. So she lets open this other world, and chaos happens, and I don't know how to explain it without giving the whole series away. It's so hard to talk about a series. But anyway, Lost is Kevin's story. It picks up right where Loved left off, pretty much. But instead of following Zoe and her friends, we do follow along with them a little bit in here, but it's mostly Kevin and his story and his world. So it was very interesting to get different views from these same characters, but they're different. They're like the same people from the House of Night, but they're in the other world as well, and they're different. So it was very interesting. It was very fun. I enjoyed it. I gave this one 4 stars. And then the third book in this series is Forgotten, also PC Cast and Kristen Cast. And this is basically Neferet's story, but the Neferet from the other world. I gave this 3 stars because I'm not a big fan of Neferet. I know she's a huge part of the books, and you know, she's the evil of the books, but I'm just not into her story. And you know, I get it, and I get, you know, that we need to get that aspect of the story to get the full story, I guess. But I just didn't enjoy it as much. It was all Neferet. There wasn't enough of Zoe and her friends, and there wasn't enough of Kevin and what he's up to and how he's coping with things. I just wanted more of that, and it was basically all Neferet. There is a 4th book coming out very, very soon, I believe. I want to say, I don't know when it's coming out. It's coming out very soon, the next couple months or so. So there's a 4th book coming. Sorry I can't give you more on that. It's just all tied in to the House of Night series, and that's just a whole nother story. Next up, The Perfect Stranger by Megan Miranda. I actually did prefer this book over All the Missing Girls. Only because I guess I understood the story better. I don't know. It wasn't the best. It was 3 stars, but it was enjoyable to listen to. I did listen to this. It was narrated by the same narrator as All the Missing Girls. And so in this book we follow Leah, who was a journalist, and for reasons that we'll find out later on in the book, she quits her job. So her and her friend Emmy pick up and they move to this little small town, I think somewhere outside of Boston. I'm not sure. It might still be in Boston. I'm not positive on that, but I know she was working in like the big city part of Boston. But she moves, her and her friend Emmy move, and they rent this little home, and Emmy ends up going missing. She kind of lets it go for a while, you know, because Emmy's sort of like a weird sort of person, kind of keeps to herself, and I mean, she's an adult, so who is Leah to, you know, to question her? But after a week of trying to get in touch with Emmy, Leah finally goes to the cops about Emmy missing. In the midst of all that, other things are happening. So Leah becomes a teacher at this local high school, and a girl is found unconscious in the woods, and this person and this girl or woman looks pretty much exactly like Leah. And there's this coach at the school that is being accused of whatever happened to this young woman. So being that this young woman looks pretty much exactly like Leah, Leah starts kind of digging into who this person is. She ends up maybe finding some things that lead to maybe Emmy's disappearance. Other things pop up. Leah does end up having a love interest in the story. So there's a lot of little things going on, which I enjoyed with that. So it was a good read. I enjoyed listening to it. I was a little surprised in the ending. I definitely wasn't expecting it, but it wasn't anything like, you know, it wasn't gasp worthy. But it was a good story. I enjoyed listening to it. Next up is Into the Water by Paula Hawkins. There's a lot going on in this book. We follow a good many characters, and each one has a story to tell. It got a little bit overwhelming for me, just trying to figure out who was who and what was happening to who and how it related to each one of them. Did it relate to each one of them? Did it boil down to one particular thing? But the book begins with Nell Abbott's death. Nell is a single mother. She is some sort of journalist, I want to say, or she's writing a book. There is a book within a book in here, and the book is called The Drowning Pool, and it's basically about the events that happen in this one particular part of a river, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. A lot of women have died over the years at this particular place. That's why it's called The Drowning Pool. We mainly follow Nell's daughter Lena and Nell's sister Jules. Those are our 2 main ones we follow, but we also follow an array of other characters that all sort of have some sort of history with Nell. So as we read along with all these characters and how they connect with Nell, we get the story of what happened to Nell and how they all sort of link together, I guess. That's about the best way I could put it. I know that's kind of all over the place. Yeah, there was a lot going on. There's so many characters and so many things happening to them, and they have a story to tell, but it all comes down to Nell's death and what happened to her and how Nell affected their life. Like I said, I was a bit overwhelmed. Even though it was a good listen, I enjoyed listening to it. I will say I didn't see that coming, I guess, but it wasn't surprising. Okay, my last 3-star is You Are Not Alone by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. Again, I just wasn't impressed with the finale of this book. We follow Shay and Cassandra and Jane, but we follow some other characters as well, but those are our main characters that we follow. Shay is not at her best in her life right now. She is living with a guy whom she sort of secretly likes, but he ends up getting a girlfriend, and this girlfriend sort of like pretty much takes over, and Shay gets to the point where she doesn't even want to go home anymore. She's working like these temp jobs. She's very into data, like facts and things like that. She loves putting facts together and getting all this data information and putting it together and doing whatever she can with that information. I felt for her. I felt for Shay, because really all she needs is a friend. And one day she's walking to the subway and she sees this woman that just seems to be in some sort of distress and ends up committing suicide. So this is all in the very beginning of the book. From that point on, she sort of gets obsessed with this woman and what could have made her do this. She like gets her name from like the police report because she was there, so she had to give her statement. So she asks for this woman's name, and she sort of like dives into her life, and she goes to her memorial, and that's where she meets Cassandra and Jane. Cassandra and Jane are two sisters that work together. They form this sort of like PR company, doing very well for themselves, and they also have like this little group of women. It's a very small group of women, and they basically what they do is just get revenge. But Cassandra and Jane seem to be at the front of this group, sort of running the show. You do get a little bit of a surprise at the end from one of these ladies that you weren't expecting that. But like I said, the whole finale and the whole of why this little group started, I just wasn't that much impressed with. But I enjoyed the story. The narration is told from different voices, so we have a cast of characters, which I always like in a book. And yeah, so once we get down to the nitty-gritty, I was just like, okay, you know, it wasn't anything spectacular, but it was fun. I enjoyed it. I believe the book club will be talking about this on YouTube. Kayla will be, of course, having a live show with a co-host, and they're going to be talking about this book if you want to know more about it on May the 10th, Sunday, May the 10th. All right, 4-star reads. First up in my 4-star read is Final Girls by Riley Sager. So we follow Quincy. Quincy is considered a final girl. She survived this Hollywood scale massacre at a camp in the woods somewhere with her friends. You don't get much of the massacre in the beginning. You get more of that in the end as we follow Quincy along with her story. But at the very beginning, you get a little bit of her running out of the woods to the cops. The cops have come to the scene, and she is running to one particular cop to please help her. She's covered in blood, but it's not her blood. Coop is the name of the cop, and they've sort of kept in touch throughout the years. He's just kind of just been making sure she's been okay, but there's definitely a story there. So we're 10 years later, and she's engaged to her fiance Jeff. She's doing her best at trying to live a normal life, whatever that may be, surviving on Xanax and wine. She has a baking blog that she does to kind of keep her mind busy. But she's not the only final girl. There's like 3 final girls in the story, and one of them ends up dead. So it's down to her and this other girl, Samantha. And these final girls were in different scenarios, and Samantha survived, I believe it was a motel break-in of some sort. And so Samantha sort of seeks her out. They form a little bit of a friendship, but Quincy's kind of keeping her distance while Sam's there in her life. Sam sort of moves in with her for a little bit, because Sam doesn't really, it seems like Sam's just kind of hopping around, doesn't really have a place to live. She's just sort of been messed up since this incident, but there's also a story there. As we read along or follow along with Quincy and her journey of having a normal life, we learn all the events and learn like what happened to the other final girl, what's going on with Sam, and what truly happened that night of this horrible massacre. I was shocked, I must say. I did not see that coming at all. Like the true story just blew me away. I kind of had it in my mind, like I knew what was happening, I knew what was gonna happen, but yeah, it totally took a different turn. I will say I did get a little bored somewhere in the middle when Sam kind of got involved with Quincy's life and I feel like she was messing around with Quincy and making her do these crazy things and making her feel like something was truly wrong with her. But it definitely picks up, and the ending, like I said, was shocking to me. But all in all, I enjoyed it. It was a 4-star read for me. I did listen to this on audio. We had 2 ladies narrating the story, and they did a fantastic job. My next 4-star reads sort of all go together. They are from the same series. They are from the Out of Uniform series by Annabeth Albert. These are male-male romances about Navy SEALs and their love interest, and I just loved it. So I finished off the rest of the Out of Uniform series. I left off after book 4. So I finished book 5, 6, and 7. So book 5 is Squared Away, and this is the story of Navy SEAL Mark, Whitley, and Isaiah. Mark, aka Wizard as they call him on base, is, I think he's a medic. Yes, he is a medic, and he's not out. He's sort of secretly been in love with Isaiah for a couple years. The book starts off with him and Isaiah talking at his sister and Isaiah's brother's wedding, but Isaiah was like 18 at that time, and Mark is a little bit older. They just kind of, Mark was just kind of like, no, I'm not getting together with you, you're too young, I'm not gonna be your first, blah blah blah, but anyways, secretly he really did have these feelings for Isaiah. And years later, a tragic accident brings them back together. There's a backstory of his sister and his brother-in-law, or Mark's sister and Isaiah's brother, who were married. They pass away, and they have like 3 children, I believe. They ended up having like 2 separate wills or something, and Mark's sister, of course, was leaving the children to him, and Isaiah's brother, of course, was leaving the children to Isaiah. Isaiah was pretty much the one that was always around. He practically lived with his brother and his sister-in-law. Not really, but he was always there. The kids know him. So when Mark comes into the picture and he's there to be their guardian, there gets to be some conflicts. But as they go about the guardianship of the kids and what they're gonna do with the house and all these other things that come with the death of their sibling, they grow together. And it was just a really beautiful story. I love them 2 together. Isaiah is, of course, younger, so he's just sort of starting out with life and figuring out what he wants to do with his life. And Mark is at a point where I believe he gets to come like Master Chief or something like that. So it's different stories happening, as well as Mark and Isaiah's story and how they come together. It was just fun, and I loved it. And then we have book 6, which is Tight Quarters. This is the story of Petty Officer Bacon and Spencer Bryant. Spencer is way older than Bacon is. He is a well-known journalist, and he's wrote many books. He's done very well for himself. I did get a little bit bored in the beginning when Bacon and Spencer sort of meet, because Spencer is deployed. He's a journalist that's deployed with Bacon's group, and he's there, to get information about his story and what he wants to write. Bacon suffered a minor injury, so he's not put out in the front line, so he's in charge of Spencer, and that's kind of how they get to know each other better. But things happen while they're deployed, and then deployment ends, they go home and they go their separate ways, but they sort of keep up with each other through like emails and things like that. Hey, Bella. But I really had fun with the rest of the story. Him and Bacon would like drive back and forth because Bacon lived on base. Spencer had like a beautiful apartment condo, I think it was condo, that Bacon would just go to, and they'd go to dinners and parties, and Spencer would cook these lavish meals for Bacon. It wasn't my favorite of the series, but I did enjoy their little story together. Due to a story that Spencer is writing, Bacon sort of gets offended by it, and so they, you know, they go their separate ways, and it was a sad and sort of loving story. It was deep, it was sad. I laughed, I cried, but yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it so much. Like I said, I just got a little bored in the beginning when they were deployed. And then lastly, book 7, this is Rough Terrain. And this is Renzo and Cannon's story. This was also a book that I read in my latest reading blog. So if you want probably better information about it, go check out that vlog. Cannon and Renzo basically meet at a smoothie place. Cannon works at this particular smoothie place, and Renzo goes there pretty much like every Friday for Fitness Friday. Renzo is very much into fitness. He has like an Instagram account that he does fitness things on. He has a good following, but that's sort of all in the background. And they sort of come together just one day. Cannon just goes ahead, he bites a bullet, and he's like, hey, if you want to hang, I get off at this time. And Renzo goes, and they end up hanging out. Cannon is also an ex-drummer, so he's contacted by one of his ex-bandmates who happens to be his ex-boyfriend, and they're going camping, and Cannon just likes to stay in touch with them. So they go on this camping trip, and the ex-boyfriend's kind of after him to bring someone. So he ends up bringing, there's a story between there, but he ends up bringing Renzo, and things happen there, but it does bring them closer. And while they're there, they're putting on like a fake boyfriend scenario, but Cannon really does have feelings for Renzo. Renzo has feelings for Cannon, but he's trying to hold back because he feels like this isn't real, you know, this is all fake. There's also backstories of Cannon takes care of his grandfather, so he lives like in a little apartment building on the side of his grandfather's house, and Renzo has issues with his family. His family knows that he's bi, but his mom sort of like has it in her mind that he's gonna eventually, you know, marry a woman and give her grandchildren. That's the only thing that annoyed me about this story. I didn't like the way his mom made him feel. Like he was holding himself back because he didn't want to disappoint his mom, and that just really annoyed me. But all in all, I enjoyed their story very, very much. All these books were narrated by Greg Boudreau, which I absolutely love. He's one of my favorite male romance narrators. So I did listen to all these books. They can be read / listened to individually. You don't have to read the whole series, but the characters all sort of play a role, a small role in each book. Okay, y'all, it's all downhill from here. 5 stars. We got 4 to go. I'll do my best, so I'll try not to be too chatty. Okay, Goodbye Paradise by Serena Bowen. Such a sweet love story, so sweet. So this is a story, or the story, of Josh and Caleb. They live in this religious community. Men are separated from women, boys are separated from girls, that kind of thing. The men are like, you know, the leaders of everything basically, and they can have as many wives as they want, have as many children as they want with any of these wives. And the women have to cater to these men. The girls are, you know, brought up from babies to cater to their man, and the boys have to work in the field and sort of earn their right as a man. And if they can't make it as a man, they are pretty much kicked out into a world that they know nothing about, have no money, no one to go to. It was a messed up situation. Josh and Caleb have become friends over the years. Josh has known for many years that he's been in love with Caleb. But it's a complicated story because Josh is so naive. He doesn't know anything of the world, and he doesn't know how to express his feelings to Caleb, and Caleb is doing all he can to show Josh that he truly does love him. It was just a beautiful love story between these two men. I loved the innocence of Josh, and I loved how Caleb, he just did his best. He loved Josh, but he also felt like he had to do what was right. I highly recommend it. It has a book too, which is Hello Forever. This is not a sequel. These can definitely be read on their own. They don't have to be read in order. I just saw that there was a book too, so of course I immediately picked it up. Josh and Caleb do make cameo appearances in the book, but it's nothing that you need to know to enjoy. So Hello Forever is Cax and Axel's story. Cax and Axel went to this church camp together since they were like 6 or 8 years old, and they became like the best friends and looked forward to this church camp every year. When they were 16, they got caught kissing at this church camp, and of course they were kicked out, and they pretty much went their separate ways. Cax hasn't really had it easy over the years. His father is a big homophobe. He's had it rough. He only stays around to protect his brothers. Axel has lived his life as a gay man. He stumbles upon Cax in the crowd of a basketball game that he's watching on his laptop because he is thinking about taking a job at this college, a social media sort of position at this college, and he wants to see what the basketball team looks like because he's a huge basketball fan, and he spots Cax in the crowd, so he takes a job. They do find each other, but it's a tough road for them, especially with Cax. Again, it's a very loving, heartfelt story about these two men coming together and just wanting to be together because they love each other, and the outside world is forcing them apart. I loved it. I loved both these books. Highly, highly recommend them if you are a fan of male romances. Next up, Ethan, who loved Carter. Again, so beautiful. Such a beautiful love story. These two guys. Carter is 24. He's done pretty well for himself. He has sort of social anxiety due to a disability that he has. He has Tourette's, so he gets these tics and twitches that he can't control, and he stutters a lot, and he's just looked at as like a freak, and it's brought on lots of anxiety for him. He's very shy. He keeps to himself. He wants to move away from LA, just to get away from the noise, the hustle and bustle of it, just to a more quieter town. So he moves, buys himself a little home, and then he spots his next door neighbor, Ethan. He just sees him outside one night and just thinks he's just a beautiful man. Ethan is brain damaged. He had a very terrible incident. He has a very much of a childish mind, but yet he's still able to communicate as an adult. He works in a coffee shop, and that's where him and Carter meet. And the meet isn't the best meetup in the world. Carter sort of makes a little mistake and later on goes to apologize. And then from there on, they become very good friends. Ethan wants to be more, but Carter is sort of holding himself back. He's just not ready for a relationship, but he does love Ethan, and they spend a lot of time together. Their friendship grows into more, and it's just a beautiful, sweet story. I laughed so much in this book because Ethan is just a hoot, and I cried. I just sobbed. It's just a beautiful story. Beautiful, so I highly recommend it. It was recommended to me by one of my subscribers, so thank you so much for recommending this book to me, because it's now become one of my favorite. I absolutely loved it. But last but definitely not least, oh my gosh, again, this I believe is one of my new favorite male romances. This is Virgin Flyer by Lucy Lennox. The beginning of this book, I did my latest reading vlog has this book in it. So if you want to know more in-depth details, go and watch that video. But it is such a beautiful story. I loved it so much. I am still floating on cloud 9 because of this book. It was just that good, and just the story of these two men is just beautiful. So we have Tio. Tio is a nurse. We have Jack. Jack is a pilot. The very beginning of the book, they come together in the sweetest and sexiest love scene I have ever read in my entire life. So they only know each other at this point as their handles. Tio is Nurse T and Jack is Fly Guy. Tio has been in love with his best friend Chris for years. He has never been with another man, never had a relationship. He is still a virgin. He's just been holding out for Chris. One night he just has enough, and he just wants to be loved. So he puts it out there on like Tinder, Grindr, whatever app he's using. I'll just read you a little bit of what he wrote on the app. One night of lovemaking with absolutely no talking. I just want to be held and loved on without chit chat or expectations. Treat me like I'm the most important thing in the world. Please stay all night and hold me. But don't be surprised if I'm gone in the morning. That right there, the book just opened up with a bang. So they go their separate ways. They don't know each other's name, but they're constantly thinking of each other. Tio is still best friends with Chris, and Chris, I'm not sure what's happening with Chris. I don't know if he just doesn't want to live that life, because he's obviously attracted to Tio, but he just doesn't want to make that commitment. And he pisses me off throughout the book, is what he really does. He just keeps dragging Tio along, and Tio has like the biggest heart. He is the sweetest guy ever. And then we have Jack, who is basically flying around the world, and he has always kind of been like not really afraid of commitment, but he knew that he wouldn't really be able to be there in the relationship due to his job. But as always, things happen. We get both sides of the stories from both point of views, and they come together. They try to just be friends, because Jack knows that Tio is still in love with Chris, and Jack doesn't want to get his heart broken. But Tio is in love with Jack, but doesn't know that Jack is ready for a commitment. So they're both just protecting their hearts, and it's just a beautiful friendship. I just enjoyed so much just reading their relationship and how it grew, and how they grew in love with each other. It was just phenomenal. I absolutely loved it. It still makes me giddy. I can see myself possibly reading it again, and I don't reread a lot. I'd like to listen to this book. I did actually read this one, so I'd like to listen to it and just see how the narration brings these characters to life. So we'll see. Alright y'all, that is it. That was a lot of books, and I apologize, this is going to be a pretty lengthy video, but as always, thank y'all so much for watching and listening to me jabber about all these books. But I enjoyed every minute of it. All these books, all these 17 books, will be listed down below in my description box if you want to go check them out for yourself. And everything else, as per usual, all my social medias, anything you want to do, join Book of the Month, check out what I'm wishing for on my Amazon wish list. Everything will be in that description box down below. I hope you're all doing well, staying safe and staying healthy. Hugs all around, and I will see y'all in my next video. Bye y'all.